Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Shaffer. We have a very exciting case to talk about today. Before I get started, quick reminder, don't forget to like us, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're watching. And if you find this video to be helpful or know someone who may, please go ahead and hit that share button. So today's case hopefully will be helpful for anyone out there who is in a similar situation. It's about a client. She originally from Nigeria, residing in Jamaica, Queens. She is a naturalized U.S. citizen, and she filed for her two children who live back home in Nigeria. But the problem was she's never been given access to the kids' birth certificates. So, how do you prove the relationship when you don't have a birth certificate? And she tried. She went back to the she had someone go back. I don't remember if she went back or had someone go back to the hospital. She tried everything she could, but she ended up submitting a birth certificate that was registered late. So USCIS sent a request for evidence. And I should also add, when you're dealing with an issue like this, where you don't, with the mother, when you don't have the birth certificate, it's almost like if the father filed, where when you file for a father, the birth certificate alone doesn't necessarily do it. You have to show a parent-child relationship. So you kind of do the same thing when it happens with the mother. So she got her first RFE, or request for evidence. My hair's going wild today. In May. And I'll talk about that in one sec, but she ended up getting three requests for evidence, or RFEs, May, July, and October. So the first one asked for two different things: evidence of her name change and evidence of her, that the kids are her biological children, essentially, since the birth certificates they weren't accepting. So with the name change, she actually herself didn't have a birth certificate, and that was because back where she was born, back then, they didn't register births if you were born outside the hospital, which she was. So she had an affidavit from her sister attesting to her birth. That's what she submitted when she naturalized and got her green card, and was fine. But the name that her children have didn't match her current name. But her current name is her new husband. It was her maiden name and her first married name that they were like, we don't know if these are the same people. So, I should also add, this is important. A lot of this occurred the way it did because she was a victim of some terrible and awful things that happened back in Nigeria, including the marriage that she was forced to enter into against her will, and that's who she had the children with. So she was, I think, orphaned at a young age, if I remember her story correct. It was honestly, it was a crushing story to read. But she is finally being able to turn her life around and get her children here, which is fantastic. When she divorced her first husband, she didn't go back to using her maiden name, and that's kind of what confused immigration, I think. I forgot to put my phone on focus. Okay, so the other evidence we submitted, so we had to show the divorce. Then we had to show that she remarried and now took her new husband's name. We submitted a detailed affidavit from her explaining the entire situation. We had her naturalization certificate, which we didn't file the initial I-130, but she did it alone, but I'm sure she included a copy of that because they weren't asking for proof of citizenship. But we submitted it again with her petition for a name change, because if you've seen any of my videos where I've talked about naturalization and changing your name, you can, one of the easiest ways besides getting a divorce to change your name is when you naturalize. They actually ask, do you want to change your name legally? You say yes, you sign something, and when you get your naturalization certificate, you already have the court document approving the name change. And and we submitted her sister's affidavit explaining who she was. That the two people were the same and that when she was born and where. So then, in terms of the birth certificates for the children not being timely registered, again, we did explain in her statement why she didn't have it. And we also submitted a lot of other evidence to show the relationship. And I was actually surprised how much evidence she had for this, which is more is better than less for sure. So they give you a list of things, and it's not exhaustive. There's other things that you can submit if you have it. But we submitted the earliest medical records in her possession, which were dentist records. We submitted wire transfers to show that she was sending money back to her children to support them. That's something more that we do normally for fathers. We showed this kid's school registration, including an emergency contact listing the petitioner as the mom, and the earliest school report card that she had, I think from first grade. She had insurance cards for the children with her name on it, a letter from their priest affirming that she was the mother, 9 that's right, 9 affidavits from family and friends attesting to the fact that she is the mom, and there's even some witnesses who were actually present when she gave birth and saw her give birth. So that's very helpful evidence. She ended up finding in all of the school documents that she got, the son's birth certificate, birth notice, and national ID card. So we did submit that, and that one was timely filed, but we didn't have that for the daughter, nor did we know if they'd have a problem, USCIS would have a problem with that birth certificate. It was one of those handwritten birth certificates, which is what you get in rural Nigeria, or a lot of countries still, you see that a lot. And then we also submitted evidence about Nigerian birth certificates because we had to explain why she doesn't have it. She couldn't get access to it. She even literally went back to the hospital, and they were like, "We don't have this," and explain why she didn't have a birth certificate because they didn't register back then when we weren't born in the hospital. And then when you look on the request for evidence, it says one way you can prove your relationship is to get a DNA test. But a DNA test is optional. Now, that's the ideal way to do it. Although it says it's not guaranteed it'll be approved, and that's more or less because if you have zero parent-child relationship, they can deny it. Never seen them deny it for a mother. I have seen them do that for a father. But basically, if you get the DNA test results back and they show you're the mother, then in all likelihood it's going to get approved. The problem was you have to get the DNA test, so that means you do and your kids abroad, which has to be administered in a specific way and given to, basically sent directly to immigration to prevent tampering. You have to do it in 84 days. That's the amount of time you have to respond to the RFE. So the problem was that this was still, Nigeria is still coming out of the pandemic, getting back to normal. There's really long waits at the embassies. They're taking a long time to process things, and the lab as well was really backed up. So she had started the process. She did her DNA test, but they were having trouble collecting the kits. So we wrote a letter explaining we started the DNA test. Here's all this other evidence, and when we get the DNA results, if you still need it, we'll send it in. So we sent this gigantic package back. 3 days after we sent the reply, they issued a second RFE. At least this one, where they no longer questioning her name change. So they knew that the two people that they were claiming with the different last name were the same person. If they still had an issue with that, they would have asked for more evidence. So they said, you told us that you started a DNA test. You have 84 days to complete that DNA test. So we're waiting. And I know my client was panicking a little because she still couldn't, The kids still were having trouble getting the test. And I said to her, well, all you can do, write back to them and say, I think we even got a letter from the lab. We did. The first time, I don't remember the second time. First time we got a letter from the lab, I'm pretty sure we did the second time that said they're still, still don't have it done. So she sent that back to them, that we're still waiting. They sent another RFE earlier this month. And finally, the kids were able to get their DNA tested. And of course, there was a match. She was their mom. And, within probably a couple of weeks, I think less than a couple of weeks, the I-130s were approved. And if my memory serves me correct, this was actually her second attempt at filing for the kids because she had the same problem the first time. But I think it was COVID. So the DNA tests weren't happening. And this is not the first client we've had to do DNA tests for. This is an issue that arises whenever you have a birth certificate that was not timely filed or timely registered. So if you're born in 2000 and your birth certificate says it was registered in 2015, there's going to be questions. I'm not talking about getting like a certified copy, which is obviously going to be a different date. I'm saying like they first registered it with the government. So you have to look at the law of the country at the time, what were the requirements, and sometimes there's just no registration. I know this is in China, this is an issue too for females when they had the one-child policy, not the two-child policy. So what's really important to take from this case? Number one, don't give up. This woman, I'm telling you, she's been through more than I could ever even imagine a single human being going through an entire life. She has persevered. She is doing great. I believe she's an RN now. All she wants, is to have her children that she hasn't seen in so long. And she's incredibly excited now, but don't give up. I mean, she knew, and I told her this when she met with me, the truth is the truth. If you're her mom, if you're their mom, we're going to be able to show it. Would we have gotten it approved without the DNA test? I honestly think we would have. If we didn't do it, because remember, it's optional, and I've had them make it not optional before. I think they give you a chance first to submit secondary evidence, and if they believe it, you're fine. But we decided to do the DNA test to make it definitive, because that's ideal. But she didn't give up. No matter what, she's like, I'm going to get my kids here, and that's that. And that's exactly what she did. And considering what she went through, I told her that I admire her. I admire how hard she worked to get to this point, and especially with all the setbacks that she experienced. Because, I mean, imagine not being able to prove that you're the mother of your own children, that you're the mother because you gave birth to them, but you can't get that. And if you're wondering, the ex-husband was actively trying to thwart her ability to bring the kids here, not helping. So don't give up. And if you're from a country or an area where birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, divorces, that there wasn't good record keeping at the time, it doesn't mean that your immigration hopes are dashed. Secondary evidence is accepted and is common. And as long as you are working with an experienced immigration attorney, you should be able to submit the evidence that you wanted. Like I said, without the DNA test, I mean, we had exhibits A through like S or T, just evidence after evidence, including her incredibly well-written, detailed statement explaining why she didn't have these birth certificates, explaining the forced marriage, how her husband treated her, why she fled the country, all of these things. And it was just really good. But on top of that, we had other extrinsic evidence that showed it, including, like I said, what's the next best thing you think of when you don't have the birth certificate? Well, someone who was present at her birth is a pretty good thing. the earliest medical record she had was from like first grade, but we submitted everything. And when there's a will, there's a way, as they say. So what's next for them? Now their case gets transferred to the National Visa Center, and that's when they're going to be prompted to fill out the immigrant visa application, submit their civil documents. Once that's all complete, it will get forwarded to Lagos Embassy in Nigeria, and they will get their medical exam and get called for an interview. And if all goes well, which it should, they will then get issued their immigrant visa and be able to enter the U.S. as permanent residents and be with their mom. So, really excited for this client. Like I said, she, my heart goes out to her and what she's gone through and how, she's stayed strong and really just continued to fight for her kids and to fight for what she knew was right. Despite all of the adversity she faced and continued to face. So I really hope that this is a new beginning for her and things start to really improve in her life and for her kids as well. So if you have this issue, we always have people with issues with identity. There are ways to resolve it. Our contact information scrolling across the bottom of your screen on YouTube and Facebook, on Instagram. If you go to our bio page, you can find it there. Send me a DM. If you know someone who will find this helpful, please hit that share button or save it for later. And don't forget, of course, like us, follow us, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, so you don't miss any more of our lives. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.